They say blood is thicker than water, but nobody warns you what happens when that blood runs cold. My name is Maya Chen, and I thought I understood my place in my family. I was wrong, dead wrong. Growing up, I was the reliable one. The responsible older sister who never caused drama, never asked for much, and somehow always found a way to make things work. While my younger sister Sophia got the spotlight, cheerleading, homecoming queen, the works, I was behind the scenes, making sure everything held together. When Dad had his heart attack 3 years ago, guess who took time off work to drive him to every cardiology appointment? When Mom needed help with the medical bills, who quietly transferred money from her savings account? And when Sophia wanted to transfer to that expensive private college her junior year, who convinced our parents it was totally fine to use my college fund because Maya's always been more practical anyway. That would be me. Every single time. Don't get me wrong. I love my family. I loved them so much that I never questioned why love seemed to flow in only one direction. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my own education while Sophia got the full college experience. I moved back home after graduation to help with expenses while she got to explore Europe for 6 months to find herself. I stayed single because family always came first, while she dated freely and eventually met her Prince Charming, James Davidson, the Davidsons. Old money, Connecticut family with a pedigree longer than my student loan payments. The kind of people who summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen, where charity galas are social currency and your family tree matters more than your actual personality. When Sophia brought James home for the first time, his mother, Mrs. Davidson, looked at our modest 2-story house like she was visiting a historical poverty exhibit. But Sophia fit right into their world. She always did have a talent for becoming exactly what people wanted her to be. Within 6 months, she was speaking differently, dressing differently, even laughing differently. That practiced, tinkling laugh wealthy women seem to master in finishing school. The engagement announcement came during one of our monthly family dinners. Sophia practically bounced in her chair as she flashed a ring that probably cost more than my car. "We're thinking spring wedding," she gushed. "Something elegant, but not too big. Maybe 150 people. I hugged her, genuinely happy. My sister was getting married to someone who clearly adored her, and they had the resources to start their life together without financial stress. What could be wrong with that? "Maya, I want you to be involved," Sophia said, squeezing my hand. "This wouldn't be the same without my big sister." I felt that familiar warmth spread through my chest. Despite everything, despite feeling overlooked sometimes, my sister needed me. That was enough. Over the next few months, I threw myself into wedding planning support. When Sophia mentioned the florist was expensive, I quietly paid for the bridal bouquet and centerpieces. When she sighed about the catering deposit being due before James's trust fund disbursement, I covered it without being asked. When she worried about having enough for the photographer she really wanted, I made another transfer. I never kept track of the total. It wasn't about money. It was about family. It was about making sure my baby sister had the perfect day she'd dreamed about since we were kids playing dress-up in Mom's closet. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday in March, tucked between a credit card bill and a grocery store circular. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy cardstock with my name written in elaborate calligraphy. Ms. Maya Chen. Inside, the invitation was stunning. Embossed gold lettering announced the union of Sophia Marie Chen and James Alexander Davidson III. The venue was the grand ballroom at the Riverside Country Club, the kind of place I'd only seen in movies. The dress code was black tie optional. I read through it twice, looking for something that seemed off, but couldn't put my finger on what bothered me. Then I noticed there was no guest line, no Ms. Maya Chen and guest. Just my name, alone. When I called Sophia about it, she was rushing between appointments. "Oh, Maya, hi. The invitation looks gorgeous, right? Mom sent me photos." "Yeah, it's beautiful. I just noticed there's no +1 for me. Should I assume David can't come?" David was the guy I'd been casually seeing for a few months. Nothing serious, but I'd mentioned him to family. "Oh, well..." Sophia's voice got that careful tone she used when she was about to disappoint someone. Space is really limited, and you said yourself that David's just casual, so we figured, you don't mind coming alone, right? You know how expensive per-head costs are. Something cold settled in my stomach. I thought about the thousands I'd quietly contributed to this wedding. Of course. No problem. You're the best, Maya. I knew you'd understand. Listen, I've got to run to the venue for a final walkthrough, but we'll catch up soon. Okay? The line went dead before I could respond. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations. Sophia was constantly busy with dress fittings, bachelor and bachelorette parties I wasn't invited to. Just keeping it small, she explained, and meetings with vendors I'd helped pay for but wasn't consulted about. I bought a new dress, navy blue, conservative but elegant, appropriate for the venue. I had my hair done. I wrapped their wedding gift carefully, an envelope containing $2,000 cash, money I'd been saving for months specifically for this moment. It was meant to help them with their down payment on the house they'd been looking at. The night before the wedding, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and unease. Something felt different about this whole event, but I couldn't identify what. Maybe it was just pre-wedding jitters affecting everyone. I should have trusted that instinct. The Riverside Country Club was even more impressive in person. Sweeping staircases, crystal chandeliers, and panoramic views of the Hudson River created the perfect fairy tale backdrop. Guests in elegant attire climbed the marble steps, their laughter echoing through the grand foyer. I'd arrived exactly on time, not early enough to seem desperate for attention, not late enough to be rude. My navy dress felt appropriate among the sea of sophisticated outfits, and I'd even splurged on professional makeup. If this was going to be my first real introduction to the Davidson family social circle, I wanted to make a good impression. The cocktail hour was in full swing when I entered the pre-ceremony area. Round tables draped in ivory linens dotted the space, each topped with stunning floral arrangements I recognized as my financial contribution. Guests mingled with champagne flutes, their conversations a mix of catching up and polite small talk. I grabbed a glass of champagne and began the familiar dance of wedding guest navigation, looking for familiar faces, checking out the gift table, getting oriented to the space. That's when I noticed something odd. Every table had elegant place cards arranged in neat rows, gold calligraphy on cream cardstock matching the invitations. I wandered over to find my seat assignment, running my finger along the alphabetical arrangement. Anderson, Barnes, Chen, but not Maya Chen. I checked twice, then a third time, moving to the other display tables. No Maya Chen anywhere. Excuse me, I approached one of the wedding coordinators, a young woman with a clipboard and a professional smile. I can't seem to find my place card. Maya Chen? She consulted her master list, frowning slightly. Chen. Let me see. Oh yes, you're not at a table. You have a special seating arrangement. Her smile looked strained. Follow me, please. Special seating arrangement? My stomach started to churn as I followed her through the cocktail area, past the elegantly set tables, past the dance floor, toward the back of the venue. Here we are, she said brightly, gesturing to a single folding chair positioned in the hallway outside the main ballroom. A plastic chair, the kind you'd find at a church basement event, sat alone near the restrooms and service entrance. I stared at it, certain there had been some mistake. I'm sorry, there must be confusion. This is in the hallway. Yes. Well, this was specifically requested for you. Something about space limitations in the main room. Her professional mask was slipping, and I could see the discomfort in her eyes. I'm sure the family will explain. Family? Right. I stood there for a moment, holding my champagne and staring at the lone chair that was apparently my assigned seat for my sister's wedding. Around me, other guests chatted and laughed, oblivious to the bizarre situation unfolding in the hallway. That's when I heard the clicking of heels on marble getting closer. Maya, darling! The voice belonged to Mrs. Davidson, James's mother. She appeared around the corner wearing a silver mother-of-the-bride dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. I see you found your spot. Mrs. Davidson, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. There seems to be some confusion about my seating. Oh, no confusion at all, dear. She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume mixed with something that smelled like condescension. Only close family gets a table in the main ballroom. You understand, I'm sure. Space is so limited, and we had to make some difficult choices. Close family. I felt like I'd been slapped. I'm Sophia's sister. Of course you are, dear. Her half-sister technically, isn't it? Mrs. Davidson's smile never wavered, but her eyes were ice cold. We weren't half-sisters. I had no idea where that came from, but correcting her felt pointless. Before I could respond, another set of footsteps approached. Sophia appeared, radiant in her wedding dress, looking like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw me standing next to the folding chair. Maya, you look nice. Her eyes darted between me, her mother-in-law, and the pathetic seating arrangement. I see you found your seat? In the hallway, I said quietly. Sophia's cheeks flushed pink. Well, you know how it is. Venue restrictions and all. Plus, you've always been more of a behind-the-scenes person anyway, right? This way you won't feel pressured to make small talk with people you don't know. She giggled. That new, practiced laugh she'd developed since joining the Davidson social circle. It sounded nothing like the genuine laughter I remembered from our childhood. Guess you don't count, she added, still giggling, as if the whole situation was amusing rather than humiliating. Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. Guess you don't count, said by my sister. My baby sister, who I'd helped raise, who I'd sacrificed for, who I'd loved unconditionally for 25 years. The woman I'd quietly funded this entire wedding for. I looked at my sister in her $1,000 dress, standing next to her future mother-in-law, who was smirking like she'd just won some victory I didn't even know we were fighting. I thought about the empty seat at every family table, the lonely folding chair in the hallway, the casual cruelty disguised as logistics, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. I wasn't a guest at this wedding. I was a charity case they'd felt obligated to invite, but too embarrassed to actually include. I was the family member they tolerated but didn't value, the sister who was useful when they needed something but invisible when it came to respect. The champagne glass felt heavy in my hand. Around us, wedding guests continued their celebration, completely unaware that my entire understanding of my place in this family was crumbling in real time. I looked at Sophia one more time, memorizing her face in this moment. My baby sister, who had just told me I didn't count, at her wedding, that I had helped pay for. Something inside me, something that had been bending and stretching and accommodating for 28 years, finally snapped. I set my champagne glass down on a nearby windowsill and walked purposefully back toward the main ballroom. My heels clicked against the marble with the same authority as Mrs. Davidson's had, but this time, I was the one with a mission. The gift table sat near the entrance, covered with wrapped presents and envelopes. I scanned the surface until I found what I was looking for. My envelope, the thick cream-colored one containing $2,000 in cash. My contribution to their new life together. I picked it up. Maya? Sophia's voice behind me was uncertain now. The giggling stopped. What are you doing? I turned to face her, the envelope in my hand. Several nearby guests had stopped their conversations to watch, sensing drama in the making. I'm leaving, I said clearly, loudly enough that everyone in the immediate area could hear. You're right, Sophia, I don't count, so I shouldn't be here. Wait! Sophia's face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Maya, wait. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I repeated the word like it tasted bitter. You seated me in the hallway. At your wedding. The wedding I helped pay for. And I'm being dramatic? The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Mrs. Davidson's expression shift from smug satisfaction to alarm as she realized this conversation was happening in front of her guests. Maya, please, Sophia whispered, reaching toward me. People are looking. Good, I said, clutching the envelope containing my $2,000. Let them look. Let them see exactly what kind of family this is. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, weighted with months of sacrifice and years of being taken for granted. I held it up so everyone could see. The thick cream paper, the careful handwriting, the obvious bulk of cash inside. "Do you want to know what's in here, Sophia?" My voice carried across the pre-ceremony area, and more conversations stopped. Wedding guests turned toward us, their champagne glasses paused mid-sip. $2,000, cash, for your down payment fund. Sophia's face went from pale to ashen. "Maya, please, not here." "Not here?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When exactly would be appropriate? When you're accepting the money? Or only when I'm supposed to disappear quietly afterward?" Mrs. Davidson stepped forward, her smile completely gone now. "I think we should take this conversation somewhere private." "No?" The word came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't soften it. "We're way past private conversations. This is where you wanted me, in front of everyone being humiliated. So, let's do this here." I opened the envelope and pulled out the bills. $2,300 bills, crisp and new from the bank. Several guests gasped audibly. In this crowd, $2,000 might not be life-changing money, but it was clearly significant enough to cause a stir. "This was supposed to be my wedding gift," I continued, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "But gifts are for people you care about, for people who—" I looked directly at Sophia. "Count." "Maya, I didn't mean—" Sophia started, but I cut her off. "Didn't mean what? Didn't mean to seat me in the hallway like hired help? Didn't mean to tell me I don't count? Or didn't mean to take my money while treating me like garbage?" The crowd was growing. Word was spreading through the cocktail hour that drama was unfolding near the gift table. I could see James pushing through the crowd, his face confused and alarmed. Behind him came my parents, looking mortified. "There's more," I said, pulling out my phone. My banking app was still open from checking my balance earlier. "Should we talk about the $3,000 I transferred for the florist? Or the $4,000 for the catering deposit? Maybe the $1,500 for the photographer?" Sophia's eyes went wide. James had reached us now, and he was staring at his bride-to-be with confusion. "What deposits? Sophia, what is she talking about?" Sophia looked around desperately, like she was searching for an escape route. "I can explain." "Please do explain," said a voice from the crowd. Aunt Sarah, my father's sister, pushed forward. She was a retired accountant with zero tolerance for financial nonsense. "Because I'd love to hear how my niece ended up paying for a wedding she's not even allowed to sit at." More murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could see other family members, Uncle David, Cousin Lisa, even some family friends, pushing forward to hear better. This was not the elegant, controlled event Mrs. Davidson had planned. "Maya has always been generous," Mrs. Davidson said carefully, trying to regain control of the situation. "But we never asked her to—" "Didn't ask?" I turned to face her directly. "You're right. You didn't ask. You expected. There's a difference." I pulled up my bank statements on my phone. June 15th, transfer to Sophia Chen, $3,000. Memo, for the flowers. July 2nd, transfer to Sophia Chen, $4,000. Memo, catering help. July 28th. "Stop!" Sophia whispered, her perfect makeup starting to run. "Please, Maya, just stop." August 15th. I continued relentlessly. $1,500. Photography deposit. September 3rd. "She's my sister!" Sophia burst out, her voice cracking. "She wanted to help. I never forced her to—" "Forced?" I stared at her. "You're right. You never forced me. You just made it clear that if I didn't help, things would be difficult for the family. You just mentioned casually how stressful it was that Dad's medical bills were making money tight. You just happened to sigh about how expensive everything was whenever I was around." James was looking between us like he was watching a tennis match, his expression growing more horrified by the minute. "Sophia, you told me your parents were covering the wedding expenses. You said your family had savings set aside." "They do," Sophia said desperately. "Maya she offered to help with a few things." "A few things?" Aunt Sarah's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. Maya, honey, how much total? I looked down at my phone, adding quickly in my head. The crowd waited in dead silence. Just over $10,000. The sound that went up from the crowd was somewhere between a gasp and a roar. $10,000. At a wedding where the bride's sister wasn't allowed to sit with the family. James staggered backward like he'd been hit. 10,000! Sophia, that's more than half of what we budgeted for the whole wedding. Mrs. Davidson's face had gone from pale to red to purple. This was not the refined, elegant wedding she'd orchestrated. This was a public financial scandal involving her son's bride, happening in front of the social circle she spent her life trying to impress. James, darling, she said through gritted teeth, perhaps we should postpone this conversation until after. No, James said firmly, and I was surprised by the steel in his voice. I want to understand this now. Sophia, did you take $10,000 from your sister and then... He looked toward the hallway where my folding chair sat. Then seat her in the hallway? Sophia was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. It's not like that. Maya always helps the family. She's always been the one who... The one who what? Uncle David had joined Aunt Sarah and his voice was dangerous. So, the one who sacrifices so you can have whatever you want? Maya worked 2 jobs to pay for college while you partied at state school. She moved back home to help with bills while you went backpacking through Europe. And now she's funding your wedding while you treat her like she doesn't exist. The crowd was fully engaged now. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a public accounting of years of favoritism and financial manipulation. I could see some of the Davidsons' friends whispering among themselves, their expressions ranging from shock to disapproval. Maya, my mother's voice came from somewhere in the crowd. She pushed through, looking mortified. Sweetheart, please, let's talk about this privately. Privately? I looked at her with disbelief. Mom, did you know about the seating arrangement? Did you know your daughter was being put in the hallway? Mom's silence was answer enough. You all knew, I said slowly, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. You all knew, and you were okay with it. It wasn't our decision. Dad started, but I held up my hand. Whose decision was it? Who decided I wasn't family enough for a table but was family enough to pay for the wedding? The silence stretched out, broken only by Sophia's quiet sobs. That's when James did something that surprised everyone. He walked over to me, gently took the envelope of cash from my hands, and said quietly, I'm sorry, Maya. This is not who I thought I was marrying. He turned to face the crowd, still holding my money. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to postpone this ceremony. There are clearly some family issues that need to be resolved before Sophia and I can move forward. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Sophia let out a wail that could probably be heard in the parking lot. Mrs. Davidson looked like she was about to have a stroke. Several guests started talking at once, their voices creating a chaos of confusion and speculation. James, no! Sophia reached for his arm. We can fix this. Maya's just being sensitive. Sensitive? James pulled away from her. Sophia, you took $10,000 from your sister and then humiliated her at our wedding. How is that sensitive? But the deposits are non-refundable. The vendors, the catering, will be handled, James said firmly. This is not about money. This is about character. And right now, I need to figure out if I really know who you are. He handed the envelope back to me. Maya, I'm truly sorry. This should never have happened. I looked down at the money in my hands, then back up at the crowd of faces staring at me. Some looked sympathetic. Others seemed embarrassed to witness such a public meltdown. A few of the Davidson family friends looked like they were mentally composing the gossip they'd share at their next social gathering. Thank you, James, I said quietly. But this isn't your fault. This is just who we are, who we've always been. I looked at Sophia, who was still crying, her wedding dress wrinkled and her makeup ruined. For a moment, I felt a flash of the old protectiveness, the urge to fix things and make everyone comfortable. Then, I remembered the folding chair in the hallway. I'm leaving now, I announced to the crowd, and I'm taking my money with me. Sophia, I hope you figure out how to pay for your own wedding. Maybe James can help, since he's apparently the only one here who understands basic human decency. I started walking toward the exit, my heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear Sophia calling my name, her voice getting more desperate with each step I took. "Maya, please! The photographer is supposed to start in 20 minutes. The ceremony—" I stopped and turned around one last time. The entire crowd was watching, waiting to see what I would say. "Take pictures of your close family only," I said clearly, since that's apparently not me. As I walked toward the exit, I heard footsteps behind me. Not Sophia's. These were different. I turned to see Aunt Sarah, Uncle David, and Cousin Lisa following me. "We're leaving too," Aunt Sarah announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is disgusting!" "Sarah, please," my mother called out. "Don't make this worse." "Worse?" Uncle David laughed harshly. "Mom, this couldn't get worse if we tried. Maya has been supporting this family for years, and this is how you repay her? By letting her be humiliated at her own sister's wedding." More people started moving toward the exit. Not everyone. Most of the Davidsons' friends stayed, probably too invested in seeing how the drama would resolve to leave now. But a significant portion of our extended family was walking out with me. As we reached the exit, I could hear Mrs. Davidson's voice rising above the chaos, trying to salvage the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could all just move into the ceremony space, I'm sure we can work through this small family misunderstanding." Small family misunderstanding. That's what $10,000 and a hallway seat amounted to in her world. Outside, the spring air felt crisp and clean after the suffocating atmosphere inside. Aunt Sarah immediately came over and hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you," she said fiercely. "That took guts." "I can't believe it took me this long," I admitted, my voice shaky now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "I can't believe I let them treat me like that for so long." "Sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees when we're family," Uncle David said gently. "You were being loving and generous. They were being selfish and cruel. That's not your fault." Cousin Lisa, who was about Sophia's age, shook her head in disgust. "I would never treat my sister like that. Never. Money or no money." We stood in the parking lot for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. Through the large windows of the country club, I could see the chaos continuing inside. Sophia was surrounded by people, some comforting her, others clearly asking questions she didn't want to answer. James was standing apart, talking intensely with his parents. "What do you think will happen?" I asked. "Honestly?" Aunt Sarah considered. "I think James is having serious second thoughts. And good for him. This whole thing has shown everyone exactly what kind of person Sophia has become." As if summoned by our conversation, James appeared at the entrance to the country club. He looked around the parking lot until he spotted our group, then walked over to us. "Maya," he said when he reached me, "I wanted to apologize again and to ask you something." I waited. "The money you gave for the wedding expenses, I want to make sure you get every penny back. Sophia says some of it has already been spent on vendors, but I don't care. I'll cover whatever's been used. You shouldn't be out a single dollar because of this mess." I was surprised by the offer and touched by his integrity. "James, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "This is my fault, too. I should have asked more questions about the wedding planning. I should have noticed that you weren't being treated like family. I should have—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I should have been a better man." "What about the wedding?" Cousin Lisa asked. James looked back toward the country club where we could still see the crowd of confused guests through the windows. "I don't know. I need some time to think, to figure out if this is just wedding stress bringing out the worst in Sophia, or if this is who she really is." He looked at me seriously. "Can I ask you something? Has she always treated you this way?" I thought about it honestly. "Not this bad, but yeah, kind of. I've always been the one who gives, and she's always been the one who takes. I just told myself that's what family does." "Family shouldn't work that way," James said quietly. "In my family, we take care of each other. We don't use each other." From inside the country club, we could hear raised voices, an argument in progress. James sighed heavily. I should go back in there and face the music. But Maya, I meant what I said about the money. I'll call you tomorrow with details about getting you repaid." As he walked back toward the building, Aunt Sarah shook her head admiringly. "That young man has more character than the rest of them combined." "Think he'll go through with the wedding?" Uncle David asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I hope he makes whatever decision is right for him. He deserves better than to be married to someone who would treat family the way Sophia treated me today." My phone buzzed with a text message, then another, then several more in rapid succession. I looked down to see messages from Sophia, from my parents, even from Mrs. Davidson, all variations of "please come back" and "let's work this out." I turned off my phone without responding. "You know what?" I said to my relatives who had stood by me. "I think this is the best thing that could have happened. I finally see everything clearly." "What do you mean?" Aunt Sarah asked. "I mean, I've spent 28 years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me the way I deserved. I've been so focused on being the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, that I forgot to ask whether they were being perfect family members to me." I looked back at the country club one more time, then at the money still clutched in my hand. Money that represented months of saving, months of sacrifice for people who didn't value what I'd given. "I'm done," I said firmly. "I'm done sacrificing myself for people who don't appreciate it. I'm done being the reliable one who never asks for anything in return. I'm done letting them make me feel like I should be grateful for scraps." As we walked toward our cars, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: lightness. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't carrying the weight of everyone else's needs and expectations. My phone buzzed again with another message, but I didn't check it. Whatever crisis was happening inside that country club, whatever damage control was being attempted, whatever explanations were being crafted, none of it was my responsibility anymore. I was finally free. 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. An actual handwritten letter on expensive stationery. The return address was James Davidson's apartment in the city. Inside was a check for $10,847, every penny I'd spent on the wedding plus interest. Along with it was a note: "Maya, I hope you can forgive how long this took." The wedding was canceled that day, as I'm sure you heard. Sophia and I spent 2 months in couples counseling trying to work through what happened, but ultimately, I couldn't get past the fundamental character issues the wedding revealed. We've ended our engagement. I wanted you to know that none of this was your fault. You were the only person in that whole situation who acted with dignity and integrity. I hope you're building a life surrounded by people who see your worth and treat you accordingly. You deserve nothing less. With respect and admiration, James. I sat in my new apartment, a bright one-bedroom place I'd been able to afford after moving out of the family home, and smiled. Through my kitchen window, I could see the small garden I'd been working on, the first space that was entirely mine to create and tend. My relationship with my family had fundamentally changed. My parents and I spoke occasionally, but the dynamic was different now. I no longer automatically said yes to every request for help. I no longer prioritized their comfort over my own well-being, and most importantly, I no longer accepted poor treatment in the name of keeping the peace. Sophia had tried to reconcile multiple times, but her apologies always came with explanations and justifications. She was sorry I felt hurt, sorry there had been a misunderstanding, sorry things had gotten so dramatic. But she was never sorry for how she'd actually treated me. That told me everything I needed to know. The last time she'd called, 3 months ago, she'd been crying. "Maya, I miss you. I miss having my sister in my life." "I miss having a sister too," I'd replied. "But I've learned that biology doesn't automatically make someone family, and family doesn't automatically make someone good to you." "Can't we just move past this?" she'd pleaded. "Sophia, moving past something requires acknowledging what actually happened and changing the behavior that caused it. You've done neither." The call had ended there, and we hadn't spoken since. Some people might think I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. Maybe they were right, but I'd spent too many years being too forgiving, too accommodating, too willing to accept less than I deserved. I folded James's letter carefully and put it in my desk drawer, next to the thank you notes from the local women's shelter where I'd started volunteering. Helping women who were learning to rebuild their lives after leaving toxic situations felt like meaningful work, much more meaningful than funding other people's dreams while neglecting my own. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Maya. Hi, this is David Chen. We met at the coffee shop last week? I smiled. David was a teacher I'd struck up a conversation with while waiting in line for my usual latte. We'd talked for an hour about books, travel, and the volunteer work we both did. He'd asked for my number, and I'd surprised myself by giving it to him. Hi, David. How are you? I'm good. Listen, I know this is short notice, but there's this art exhibit opening downtown tonight, and I was wondering if you'd like to go. I remember you mentioning you love photography. I looked around my apartment, my space, my choices, my life that I was finally building according to my own values rather than everyone else's expectations. I'd love to, I said. As I got ready for my date, I caught myself in the mirror. I looked different somehow, stronger, more present, like someone who knew her own worth and wasn't afraid to demand that others recognize it too. The woman staring back at me had learned one of life's hardest lessons. Sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones you have to love from the furthest distance. And sometimes walking away isn't cruelty, it's survival. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, ready for whatever came next. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself, and it felt extraordinary.